The bat signal has been lit. Go through the grandfather clock, secret entrance, and head back to the Batcave. It's time to revisit the Batman animated series with your hosts, Adam and Nick. In this episode, the Emerald Enthusiast fills in for Nick as Adam and Donnie break down the Batman and Spawn crossover comics.
Welcome to another episode of Back to the Batcave. And here on this podcast, we talk all things Batman. It's typically geared to Batman the animated series. We often venture into live action movies and comics, and that's what we're specifically focusing on today, comics. With me this week is my co-host, Donnie, the Emerald Enthusiast, as you can see by his hat. And if you're only listening to the show, then you can't see his hat, but I just told you about his hat. So figure it out. But Donnie, how's it going?
Hey, what's up, everyone? It's the Emerald Enthusiast here to talk a little Batman and a little Spawn.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. The comics we are going to be looking at and discussing are the, I believe, 2 times that I personally am aware of, and the 2 times that I've read, that Batman and Spawn have crossed paths in the comic books. Before we can talk about the comics themselves, one of being coming out in 1994, the other one most recently this past December, we think it's important to kind of, because you've heard Donnie and I and Nick and I and Chris and I and whichever co-host is with me and I talk about Batman, so you know we're Batman fans to various degrees, but you don't know our Spawn history, so we thought we'd give you a bit of that information so that when we eventually launch our Spawn back issue discussion series where we talk about Spawn comics, then we won't have to go through this part over again. This is kind of a backdoor pilot for our Spawn show, in addition to being the Batman show. But so, Donnie, with that being said, with that big wordly lead up, tell us a little bit about your Spawn fandom, if you will.
Well, it's pretty simple. I mean, you know, I became an adult in the 90s and moved away from home the first time I ever really had my own money and could go and get comics whenever I wanted. And I was also in a big city, much like with Green Lantern. And so I decided that Spawn was... Oh, I'll take a drink of water, too. But Spawn was...
2 minutes and 24 seconds.
Spawn was huge in the 90s. That's actually one of the reasons that DC Comics made a lot of changes and went with younger heroes, because Image was having such success with characters like Spawn. Mm-hmm. And I had like the first 12 issues. After that, things got a little spotty because I started to move around. But I had a lot of the old figures for the longest time.
Shocking, you had action figures, Donnie? I'm shocked.
Those were some great action figures, man, let me tell you. Yeah, and you know, I went and saw the movie. I believe I saw the movie on opening day. It's been too long for me to actually remember, but Spawn was just a character who, you know, kind of took the gloves off, was definitely not for kids. And again, as a man at that time who still wanted to read comics, the character was just very appealing because the stakes with which he dealt were, you know, supernatural and life and death and you know, multiverses and things like that. It was just very appealing to me as a reader at that time.
Awesome.
Also love Todd McFarlane. He co-created Venom, one of my favorite characters. So,
and fellow Canadian. So I have to support my, my compatriot. But for me, when Spawn came out was 92, right? I believe, or was it 93?
That was the first one, I believe it was 92. Yeah.
So I was 9. Not really, I would think, the book that I probably should have been.
So that's a little on the young side, but we all got our hands on stuff like that, didn't we?
Yeah, something that I probably shouldn't have been exposed to, but back in those days, I remember you could go to I believe you could get comics at the bookstores in the mall, at least here. They weren't like specific comic stores, but you can get them at the thing. And so I remember every time we'd go, I'd be able to buy, one or two comics,
Hmm?
and I remember picking. Um, um, I think it must have been a Batman issue. I'm pretty sure it was. Can't remember the number, but it's somewhere upstairs in a box, one of my long boxes. And also the other one was, a copy of Spawn. And back then it was more like, oh, look at the art, and it was less about let me read what's actually happening, and let me just look at pictures.
Well, full disclosure, I picked up any number one that I saw if it was a new character because I was like, even if I don't like this, I can trade it down the line for
Yeah,
something
you
I
never
do
know.
like.
You never know if it's going to be worth something.
So,
So I was just captivated by the look of him. Like he had a Spider-Man kind of visual aesthetic, but I mean, this is not marked for kids, right?
this will be for adults.
So basically, I'm not going to go too far into the vulgarities, but if I could imagine what my 9 going on 10-year-old self was thinking when I saw that cover, my first thought would have been, oh, it's Spider-Man with balls, violence, the thing and this and that. So that's kind of, it was it was all about the visuals at first, and then
in a lot of ways, if you think about combining Spider-Man and Batman's costumes with the big tape and everything,
it's Spawn,
that's Spawn. So,
and then throw the skull for a little bit of Punisher action.
Yeah,
the chains are just badass. So who cares whether they're taken from another character or not? They're just badass. But and then as I got older, I remember '97 the movie. What a year to come out. Along with Batman and Robin, oh Lord! But I you know what, and I'm just going to say it, and people can chastise me and make fun of my opinion. It is what it is. I enjoyed that movie, the Spawn movie I'm talking about.
I will say this forever. I that for 1997, the visuals in that movie, especially for Violator, were amazing.
Yeah. The costume was good too.
Yeah, those were now Malbolgia. I get it. People say he looks CGI, and very much so. But for what?
It's 1997, folks.
What they achieved in 1997 was amazing.
Yeah.
So
I still enjoy that movie. We'll have to do a review of that on our Spawn-centric podcast.
Yeah. Did you ever watch the animated show?
Oh yes, I did. Yeah. That came around the same time, right? Or was it a year later?
It was around that time. It definitely was not for kids. Wow.
It was a year or two. Yeah, but I was. Yeah. Hold on. Wait a second. 97. Wait a minute. It's math time. Not good at that. 83, 93. I was 14. Yeah, I mean, you could skip it. At 14. At 14, you're watching crap you shouldn't be watching anyway. So I remember I was watching the animated series, and I loved it. By the way, it's fantastic. And
that was amazing animation.
So. And we'll have to review that on our Spawn show as well. So that was my sort of history with Spawn, and now I've recently.
Yeah, the first episode premiered May 16th, 1997.
Right, so it was kind of capitalizing on or trying to do a 1-2 punch with the movie.
Right. Much like, again, Green Lantern had the movie, even though, again, did not succeed in the way they wanted it to, but they had at the same time, if you're trying to raise awareness of a character, you put the animated series out with the movie. And
cross-pollination exactly.
Not cross-pollination, but
cross-promote. Joint, dual promotion, whatever the hell the word is.
Multi-pronged attack. How about that?
Thank you. That's the better. You see, that's why I'd be fired if I was in marketing. They'd be like, sir, that's not cross-pollination. You're fired. But
cross-pollination would be like, wrestling and comics influencing one another, which happens a lot. Yeah.
Listen, I'm trying to sound smart. Clearly it didn't work. Let's move on. But, so that's my sort of history with him. And then since the big 300 issue, I picked that up physically, but I've been reading digitally. I've been buying it on.
Did you stretch first before you picked it up?
Never mind. The 300 and 301 are they're not like graphic novel or anything, but they are thicker. So I mean, Stretching would be recommended. But
My
no,
wife
so,
did struggle to get. She got me the Blackest Night omnibus edition. Yeah, but
so wait
it's
a minute. Now, hold on. So we went 2.5 minutes and now 9.5 minutes. So you went a whopping 7 minutes without talking about Green Lantern.
yeah. So she said she had to use two hands because it was so massive to like give it to me. She was like, "Here you go," you know.
That's awesome.
So that's a good feeling to hold a comic, a new thick omnibus in your hands. That's a great feeling.
And something you could use as a makeshift steel chair. And if you're mock wrestling, is also a bonus, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So
somebody says there doesn't need to be a Green Lantern in Justice League.
Yeah. But you know, I've been reading digitally via Amazon Kindle. And I'll probably pick the physical copy up again of 350 when that hits in a few months' time. That's my history with Spawn, and I'm reading all the you know, the offshoot titles that you know, the McFarlane's created a universe now, so I'm picking those up digitally as well. Those are really cool. I really like the Gunslinger Spawn character. He's pretty cool.
Yeah.
He's probably my favorite offshoot of Spawn.
I noticed that in the second comic that we're going to review, Haunt made a cameo.
I like Haunt as well.
Yeah.
He's cool.
Spawn talked about his friends, his team, you know, people with whom he works, and
Team Spawn.
One of was Spawn was Haunt. Excuse me. So.
Yeah. Haunt is cool. I like Haunt as well. He's cool. So that's my history with Spawn, and I like the character, and I'm digging the expansion of the world, and. What's funny is that of these two crossovers, there's one that I am kind of ho-hum on, and the other one I think is fantastic. Yeah. And you'll find out as we review it. So
needless to say, Todd has brought a lot of these characters into my life.
Look at that. That's a badass character and figure. Look at that. Yeah. That's awesome.
I love this character, and obviously I collect the Lantern characters from the McFarlane line. The DC Multiverse McFarlane line I usually get two a piece. So
now listen, Todd, I'm just gonna say this: with that DC line that you got going, you're killing my wallet, buddy. I just pre-ordered the Adam West Batman 66 figure, the Robin that goes with it, because of course if you have Batman, you need Robin, right?
Yeah.
And I never had Batman 66 figures, but these are the first two, so I had to get them. And I also bought or pre-ordered, because it's delayed in Canada. It comes later. Thank you, Todd. Thanks for, good job in taking care of the homeboys. No, I'm kidding. But I pre-ordered the Action Comics #1 Superman.
Oh, that's sweet.
That's on its way to me at some point in September.
Yeah, I just found a deal this morning on the Alan Scott. The collector edition Alan Scott. So.
Did you get it in the store or online?
No, this was somebody who had it. Yeah, it's not. Okay. I don't think it's actually sold in regular retail stores. We're not talking about the Dread Lantern. We're talking about the collector edition Alan Scott.
Yeah. No, the Alan Scott.
There's two Alan Scotts that's out now.
Oh, not the one that he announced with the Superman. There's another one.
Yeah, there's another. There's the Dread Lantern. That's the Elseworlds one.
Oh, I must have not seen this one for whatever. You have to send it to me later.
Yeah.
Because I need to spend more.
Or what was Dark Knight's Metal or whatever it was? Yeah, it was that. So I have the comic somewhere. Yeah,
I get what you're saying now. Yeah. So that line has taken a lot of money from me, and just want to. So we're big supporters of McFarlane, is what we're saying.
Yeah.
But
basically, yeah, roundabout way of saying we buy a lot of McFarlane stuff.
Yeah. So. Thanks a lot, buddy. But my wallet hates you. But
I actually have a bunch of Kyles, a stack of Kyles right here. I'm like, even though I already had some, I was like, I'll get these because they're good for autographs. I go to shows.
I'm shocked that you have multiple Kyle Rayners, Donnie. Wait, hold on. Does your wife drink every time you talk about Green Lantern? Because she may be struggling otherwise.
She'd never leave the bathroom if that was the case.
That's what I mean.
See, I have found all of these Kyles here.
Good Lord, that's a lot of Kyles. That's a stack of
all these Kyles, and I'm just like, all right, because they're clearing them out now because McFarlane pumps them out, and I'm like, all right, if I'm going to get discounted prices, might as well pick up some.
I love the autographs. Oh, they're cheaper, so sure. Like you needed the arm twisting, Donnie.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're big fans of McFarlane, both in print and in plastic, I guess.
Yes.
And by all accounts, he seems like a really nice guy, from what I've heard from people that have met him and interacted with him. So that's a bonus as well.
Also, I watched that documentary on Image not too long ago. Image. That was very interesting. So.
Yeah. Definitely, for sure. It's a great, fantastic story. And get going on the Spawn movie, Todd. That's. I want to see a Spawn movie before. I'm debating what's going to come first. Donnie, you could weigh in here. What am I going to see first? The Spawn movie or the Leafs win the Stanley Cup? Go ahead.
Oh, I think the Spawn movie. Yeah.
Yeah, I figured. As sad as that
Definitely the Spawn movie.
I figured as much. But yeah, so we'll wait. And by the way, if and when there are developments on the Spawn movie, we'll bring them to you on our Spawn show. So stay tuned for that. But all right, so we've got our Spawn, resumes out of the way. Let's talk about the first of the two crossovers, which was in 1994, and it was Spawn Batman, I believe, right?
Yes, this was Spawn Batman in 1994, written by Frank Miller with art by Todd McFarlane, published actually by Image Comics, not DC.
Yeah, that's why Spawn went first in the title. See how that works?
By the way, absolutely beautiful cover.
Absolutely, yeah.
The
Very Dark Knight Returns.
Yes, the first one of these. Actually, if I remember correctly, isn't this set like in the same universe as Dark Knight Returns? Didn't Todd McFarlane say that at one point?
Hey, you know what? It might be because I'm like, again, sorry for my language, but as I'm reading it, and this is part of my problems with this crossover. As I was reading, I'm like, you know what? Batman's an asshole in this.
I was going to say the same thing. He's a little overly cantankerous.
Kind of like Dark Knight Returns, and I'm like, that probably makes sense now. Thank you, Donnie. You just made it make sense. Doesn't mean I like it that much better, but it makes sense.
I want to say that somewhere I did read that it was set.
You're probably right because it does feel that way.
Yeah. By the way, the very first copy that I read of this did not belong to me, and I accidentally
you stole it from somebody?
No, I did not. It belonged to my roommate in college, and I accidentally set down something wet on it and ruined the cover. So, again, Spencer, I'm sorry. One day I'll buy you a new Spawn Batman. So Donnie, I may have already done that. I may have forgotten.
Your current self would be so angry with your younger self for damaging a comic book. Exactly. I'd like to watch that conversation. Somebody get us a time machine.
Yeah. So, but yeah, like I said. Seeing Spawn with other heroes like this, established heroes, was very attractive to, collectors and, again, veteran readers to see, the old character with the new character. So, basically, the setup here is that Batman comes to New York City in search of a bunch of high-tech weapons, including robots that use the decapitated heads of humans. Which that was some really dark art there to see, both Batman and Spawn with people's heads, and they're like, I can't feel anything. How did I get here?
Very disturbing. It was.
Yeah.
And noticing just, okay, we'll get into that when we talk a bit about the art. But go ahead. Keep going.
So what we have here is a clash of styles. Batman and Spawn each searching for the villain behind this. What's going on here? Spawn in his uber violent, kills without thinking, has no reservations about killing, and Batman who only, kills if he's in a life or death situation, does everything he can to avoid it, and who, Spawn is annoyed with Batman because he thinks that he's, being overly idealistic. Batman obviously annoyed with Spawn because he thinks that he's just an indiscriminate killer. And so they have several brutal battles. I will say this, though. One of my pet peeves about comics is when you see two heroes meet and one is obviously much more powerful than the other. A lot of times sometimes writers overlook that. And they're like, oh, we have to have this battle or whatever. And it doesn't make sense. Right. In this one, they actually invent a reason that Spawn and Batman can compete on the same level for a while.
Absolutely, yeah. And even in the second one, they do as well.
Yeah.
which is they come up with a workaround for it.
Yeah.
But what I do like about the pairing in this 1994 issue is the the constant, clash of styles. Like they're each, as they're sort of, verbally and physically jousting with each other, not with actual literal jousting, but you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been cool if Medieval got involved and they started coming in with the friggin' actual medieval stuff, like weaponry and stuff. Then Batman would be, really screwed. But the constant discussion about that, the clash of ideology of, because Batman sees, he basically says, not in so many words, but what you're doing makes you a murderer. You're a criminal. You're just as bad as
them. Yeah.
As the people we're supposed to fight. So, I like that aspect because it keeps Batman consistent. But from Spawn's perspective and other heroes, that this has been a conversation that has left the pages of comics and sort of happened in just general conversation. Is, well, if Batman stopped just wrangling up his villains like the Joker, the worst of the worst, and just kept throwing him in Arkham to then later escape and cause more death. If Batman just took him out, wouldn't that have saved a lot more lives? You know what I mean? So there's that constant.
Well, and he's had a discussion with other heroes before too. Wonder Woman, for instance.
So it's like you could see both sides of it. Like when Spawn back in the early days, and we'll discuss this issue, when he took out the when he took out Kincaid, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was no point when I was reading that issue, but like, well, you should have you shouldn't have killed him. I was like, no, kill the SOB, right? Because of Kincaid's past and what he does, right?
Right.
So in that situation, you're like, yeah, go ahead, do it. He deserves it, right? So it's like there is that. Even as a fan, you're like, I see both sides of it. Like the people they're fighting are not good people,
right? And this is how you make a comic story interesting.
Yeah. So that aspect of it was interesting. The back and forth and the push and pull of it all.
Also, just real quickly, I want to point out that this was actually dedicated to Jack Kirby, who died in 1994.
Yes, that
one of the most prominent creators ever in comic history. So
that was a nice touch.
Yep.
The other thing that I actually did find interesting was, and I don't know how to explain it, so I'm going to use a Star Trek terminology.
Okay.
And just because I don't think they came up with a verbal cue for it or an explanation. But Spawn and Batman do this kind of like mind meld situation.
Yes.
Was there a descriptive for it? Was there
I don't know, other than Batman just constantly saying, "Get out of my head, get out of my head."
And I've never seen Spawn do this, so this was new to me.
Yeah, he linked their consciousnesses.
Yeah,
so they could basically it was, and he did so. He kept doing so actually, so they could communicate, which makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And
Batman
so
didn't like it,
so they can kind of get on the same page, right?
Yeah.
And it's fun because so now Batman is sort of seeing what happened with Wanda, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Spawn gets a sense of, why Batman came to be because of the death of his parents,
right?
Thomas and Martha.
Why'd you say that name?
Hey, and by the way, because he's going to do this a couple times in this episode, so every time Donnie says that, take a drink of whatever you're drinking, folks. That's going to be a new thing.
Yeah.
So I like that they kind of came to an understanding temporarily, based on that connection that Spawn made. And of course, Batman being annoyed by him constantly doing it is in keeping with Batman's character, because if you ever see him interact with somebody like Deadman, what is it, right?
Yeah.
That's the character's name, the DC character, right?
Yes, Deadman. I thought you were getting ready to say Deadpool, and I was like, well, when did this happen? Yeah.
No,
Deadman. Yeah.
He currently in the Night Terror storyline, Deadman is doing it, and it's pissing Batman off to no end.
Right.
And it's hilarious. So it's keeping consistent with the character, which I dig. I just want to anywhere else you want to go before I get into some issues that I have with the.
Oh, I love, the part that you're talking about where they have this, kind of mental link here. You actually, this perfectly illustrates their two different perspectives. Batman says to, Al Simmons, murderer, you're a murderer 100 times over. You're detestable. And Spawn says, I was a soldier. I fought and I died. I wasn't some rich kid with a hang up about bats. I was a soldier facing bullets.
Yeah. So I did like that exchange. It was awesome. But so I do have some issues with this issue. I should say problems with this issue, just for it to make sense.
No, what you said was right.
No, but it makes sense in my head when I say it the other way around. One of the things that I kind of am confused by is this book doesn't make a distinction between the DC universe and the world Spawn inhabits. Mm-hmm. It's just Batman ends up in New York because he's tracking this criminal or this case, and Spawn is there. And the way it plays out in my head, because it wasn't. Nobody told me different in the book, at least that I read. Maybe I missed it, but when you do it like that, that tells me that all right, Spawn exists in Batman's universe, in the DC universe. Mm-hmm. So going under that presumption, why is this the only time he's ever shown? Like from a business standpoint, I understand it, but after I read this issue, going forward, right, where's Spawn? But so my thing is, if Batman could just go to New York and see Spawn, that to me says, hey, they're in the same universe. So why has Spawn never ventured out to Gotham or Bloodhaven or Metropolis or Keystone City? Like it's like right. So like I need that. If you're going to cross over two characters from different companies, I need that separation. I need you to tell me that through some multiverse shenanigans, they've shown up on the same plane of existence.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Otherwise, you make me want to see more of the other person or the other people in the other characters' books, and there's no in-story explanation of why that never happens again. So that kind of sort of is a pet peeve of mine. So that's one thing. The other thing that I think this issue misses the mark on is it's the main person that they're after is a rather bland, evil person.
Yeah, Margaret Love.
Yeah, who I had no idea who that was.
As far as I know, I think this is her only appearance. I could be wrong about that, but I don't ever remember hearing about her after this. So,
like, I never heard of her in the DC universe. I never heard of her in the Image universe.
She was pretty sadistic,
Oh, she's a creep. She's disturbing. No doubt about it. But I would have.
And Todd's art is awesome on her, by the way. I love
absolutely.
The hair and the kind of nasty look.
Yeah, the art's great. But my thing is, when you have characters like Batman and Spawn, and you have Joker, Violator, Clayface, Kilgore. I don't know. I would, if I'm crossing them over for the first time ever, I'm using one of those characters, or a couple of those characters.
Mm-hmm. Right? That's a good point. Yeah.
So that was it was a little as disturbing as she was. That choice of villain was a little bit of a letdown for me personally. But there is this cool big sequence where they stop a rocket from detonating in New York, which is, that was cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I just wish it was, a bigger name villain causing.
No, actually, as I'm looking at this, I'm like, I could have sworn that he mentioned, Okay, no, I guess it was Batman who mentioned Clark.
Yeah, and he said, "Who's Clark?" Yeah,
who's Clark?
That's right. And he's like, "None of your business."
Exactly. But I like that they kind of made it, the reference of Spawn being more on the power level of Superman than Batman.
Yes,
and so they don't just meet and start fighting, and Batman's able to keep up with them. They actually do give you some reasons when they're actually able to go toe to toe why that is.
Yes, of course, absolutely, yeah.
And Batman actually says you're dumber than Clark, man.
And that's when I knew, I'm like, wait a minute, that's Dark Knight Batman.
Yeah.
Because in continuity, Batman respects Clark.
Yeah.
Where Dark Knight Returns, Batman doesn't.
I like the scene where he's staying up and Alfred's like, what you having? Do you having problems sleeping? Or you having nightmares? And he's like, I don't get nightmares, I give them. And I'm like, at this point, Alfred's got to be like, you know what? I'll wash your underwear. So cut out the Halloween routine.
Cut it with the voice.
Exactly.
Or I'll spike your teeth with some with some Benadryl, and you'll go right to sleep.
Exactly. It's Vichy Suessa. It's supposed to be cold.
Yeah, anyway. Exactly. Yeah, but no. So eventually, them stopping the rocket and saving New York. That was a cool scene. It felt like something out of a James Bond movie.
Yeah, and plus, honestly, just the art from Todd with the big, huge capes, behind both of them. If you like that kind of art, this is your book.
I think Todd McFarlane is like the master of cape action.
Oh yeah.
Nobody does cape action like him.
Definitely one of my favorite. And as far as honestly, Blood and Guts, he does that really well too. And deformed looking characters, he does that well.
Body horror, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
The even the ending, Spawn's kind of like, hey, for Spawn, this is kind of, he's not, jumping around doing jumping jacks. Waving around pom poms, but he's pretty pleased with the fact that they saved New York.
Mm-hmm.
And Batman's just like miserable, and he's like, "Stop! Basically, stop killing people, or I'll be back."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, still as miserable as can be. So.
And then he shoots a batarang in his eye, right? And Spawn's eye.
Yeah, after Spawn saves him, by the way, because Batman sustains a mortal wound in battle here.
Yeah,
and he dies, and Spawn heals him. And Batman still hits him with the batarang.
Yeah, because you kill people, and that's not okay with me.
Just a nasty old cuss.
but I'm like, okay, that's again. I like, and I'm somebody that Dark Knight Returns kind of pulled me back into comics, but there's only so much asshole Batman I can take. There's a limit to my acceptance of that, and so I'm like, come on, man, just relax a bit.
He even calls him boy a bunch of times. I'm like, come on, that's really disrespectful, Batman.
Yeah, which is where that's where they got the whole Sun line from Batman versus Superman. That's why that's in keeping with the Frank. That's where they got their inspiration for that Batman. But so it tracks. But so it was like, yeah. But now that you've said, that this is set in the Dark Knight Returns timeline, pre-Dark Knight Returns, obviously, but that makes sense given Batman's attitude and demeanor. It tracks more with that. The art overall, I really enjoyed it. Spawn is drawn spectacularly. Todd is the creator of Spawn. So if anybody should know how to draw him and make it look the best it could look, it's him, and he does that in spades. Yep. His Batman is very much in terms of this issue. I thought Batman very much looked like a cross between the Dark Knight Returns Batman and the Batman the Animated Series Batman. Mm-hmm. So it's a kind of a mixture of the two that I really kind of I like the look of it. So the art was really solid throughout. What did you think of the art? What stood out?
I thought the art was beautiful for the most part, and like I said, Todd does these type of characters well. Obviously, he does Spawn. He's the guy who thought Spawn up.
Right.
The capes, the gore. Again, Margaret Love. I thought, the way he drew her hair, everything looks really good, including, the decapitated heads when they're being taken out of the robots, and all that was really good. I did have a little problem with the way that he drew, and the people are going to say I'm splitting hairs here. When you go with the short ears, there's ways to do that, and then there's ways that it looks kind of weird. And I thought in this case, it looked a little off.
Something did look off. I will agree with you. Now that you mentioned the ears, I'm more of a slightly longer eared Batman. Not Kelly Jones.
They don't have to be a foot. They
don't have to be the CN Tower on his head.
Yeah.
2 CN Towers on his head. But I'm talking about like I like the Keaton Kilmer sized bad ears, right? In that realm, or the Bale thing.
Yeah.
One of the problems I had with Affleck was the short ears. Like I'm not a fan of that look. So
yeah.
Something was off, and you're right about that. That was it.
Yeah. Yeah. But I love the story. Even with Batman being kind of off kilter with his personality.
Yeah.
I still think the overall structure of the story was very strong.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, is there anything else you want to mention about this issue, or we'll go ahead and rate it, and then we'll move on to the next?
No, I love the and love the coloring too. It just everything in this. I think for the most part,
the atmosphere looked really good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. So remember, give it a rating out of 5 for story and 5 for art. Go ahead.
Okay, for story, I'm going to go 4.5. For art, I'm going to go 4.5 as well.
Okay, I'll go a 3 for the story because I said I had some issues with where is it? Like, are they on the same universe? Are they not?
Mm-hmm.
The villain choice, I would have wished they had gone for somebody different, even though this villain was sadistic. And for the art, I'll give it a 3.5. It was mostly really strong. But when you mentioned the year issue, it just reminded me how much I'm not a huge fan of Batman with short ears.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a 3 for the story and a 3.5 for the art. But with that issue done, let's take a quick break, and then on the other side we'll come back and review the 2023 edition of Batman and Spawn Crossing Over, this time published by DC Comics.
Right.
Be right back.
Don't go anywhere.
What's up, everyone? It's the Emerald Enthusiast. For all of your multiverse viewing and listening needs, check out our shows, which include Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Ghostbusters, Power Rangers, the Marvel Universe, and the DC Universe, including the Emerald Echo podcast. You can check us out on Podbean, and remember to subscribe right here on YouTube. That's the Multiverse Musings Podcast Network. From the first podcast to the last.
And we're back.
Indeed we are, and we're fast forwarding through time from 1994 all the way to 2023, when Batman and Spawn would meet again in the form of, actually it was 2022.
I was going to say, it was the very end of 2022. It was like, near the end of October.
Time means nothing anymore after the 3 years of pandemic.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all screwed up, folks. But this past December.
We'll explain it. So if somebody's actually listening or watching this 100 years from now, that's why time seems so meaningless. So
if you're watching this 100 years, not that I'll be able to see it, but leave in the comments whether the Leafs won the cup or not. Because my goal is to find out if they did or not. If they haven't, when I was alive, they we'll figure it out. But anyway, so in 2022. Batman and Spawn met again, and so tell us about the creative team and a little bit about the story, Donnie.
Okay, this time it's actually Todd McFarlane writing the story, pencils by Greg Capullo. Todd does the inks, colors by Dave McCraig, and main covers by Capullo, McFarlane, and Dave McCraig. And just a myriad of variant covers as well.
Which my new comic shop has a bunch of them, and I am teetering on like which one do I get?
Yeah, lots of big names here: Alex Sinclair, Jason
Jim
Fabok,
Lee,
Jorge.
Jim Lee, which is the one I might lean towards because it's Jim Lee, and I love Jim Lee. Arts.
I didn't even see Jim Lee here yet. There he is. Brett Booth.
Yeah.
Jorge Jimenez.
Yeah. And also I like Jorge because of his name. I like saying Jorge. All right. So give us a breakdown, a general description of the story.
So we find out here that June 26th is a big day in the life of both Bruce Wayne and Al Simmons, because that's when Wanda and, why did I say that name? Martha were killed. By the way, I love the art here. The split down the middle.
Screen.
Yeah. Where do you see, Martha, she's putting her earrings in, and Wanda, she's looking at herself in the mirror. Very, again, very similar. Yeah.
And foreboding.
Yeah, both drawn very well, by the way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Capullo is Capullo just has and he spent time on the main books of both of these characters, but he has quite a knack of drawing both characters. And
you can see that that Al and Bruce both think that they abandoned their respective loved ones when they needed them. That there was a lot of guilt there.
To which I say, Bruce, you were 9. Relax. Like, what could you have done? Were you going to jump in front of the bullet? Like what were you going to do as a 9-year-old? And Spawn, you were dead already.
Yeah.
And you were probably at the time, if I'm not remembering when it happened in continuity, but I'm gonna take a guess that you were in the midst of battling some demonic evil entity while she was getting killed. So it's like you guys couldn't have really done anything, but psychiatry is your friend. I recommend both of you seek it. But that was an interesting shared connection that they both had on that same day, but also they both bear the brunt of what they perceive as their failures.
By the way, one of my favorite panels is after Bruce's lament. He's in his mansion, and he's lamenting the anniversary of the day that his parents were killed. But it's time to be Batman. There's this great panel here of him swinging through the city, and it's time for me to go scare them again.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, that's Batman right there. Yeah.
And it's interesting because Alfred. So this happens at a point in continuity where Alfred is still alive, because in the main continuity. See, it's weird because Spawn's talking about his team. He mentions, the Scorched, which is his superhero team, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Bruce is talking to Alfred. The only problem is, by the time the Scorched came around, Alfred was already dead in the main continuity. So I'm confused, but I'll let it go because it was cool.
Yeah, well, I've heard a lot of people ask, they're like, is this Rebirth Batman? Is this New 52 Batman? Where is this?
It seems like probably in between New 52 and Rebirth, somewhere in the transitional period, because Alfred was still alive at the beginning of Rebirth, and all the Court of Owls stuff happened. So that's why I'm thinking that it's at the beginning of near the start of Rebirth. But that scene with him and Alfred was cool because they're talking about it, and they see the signal, and Alfred says, "Not today," and he's like, "No," he's like, "I have to." He's like, "There is no day off. These people don't care what I want or how I'm feeling. They just, they don't stop. So, and then he goes out and he says that line about, it's time to make them afraid.
Mm-hmm.
And it really kind of highlights that being Batman is Bruce Wayne's kind of therapy for dealing with his parents' death. Because when he's Batman, you don't see him.
Well, they've dealt with that theme a lot in Batman's comics. Is Batman real, and is Bruce Wayne just the mask he puts on and the charade he puts on?
Yeah,
is he really? Was he forever irrevocably changed into the Dark Knight when his parents died?
Yeah. And so what I like about this book is that where it succeeds compared to the first crossover is that they give me a very clear, sense that Spawn has to use supernatural means because he's getting voices inside his head that are telling him that he has to go through the void and get to Gotham City. So they're not on the same universe. And I was like, perfect.
So that clicked for you. I like the symmetry here, though, because remember when they met up the first time, Batman jumped on the Spawn, and in this one, Spawn jumps onto his back.
Yeah.
And that's how they meet, So there's those, two moments that I like that little callback.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was cool. And both are being played by a larger threat, which we assume, at least for 3/4 of the book, is the Court of Owls. But as we see later on, and we'll discuss in a bit, it could be somebody even more nefarious and I don't know about more dangerous, but nefarious for sure. But so they're both being played, and so they're and they touch on what's going on in Spawn's current book because they talk about the dead zones and the opening of the dead zones, and that's what Spawn's dealing with currently in his own book. So I like that there is this does take place in, despite it being a little bit murky on the Batman side, it does take place within the main continuity at some point. As opposed to where the other one was, like you're saying, I think firmly implanted in the Dark Knight Returns timeline.
I'll say this too, how I had an issue with heroes sometimes fighting who are on different power levels here. The first time they clash in this book, again, Spawn's powered up with the Hellfire magic, whatever, and he beats the snot out of Batman.
Oh yeah, it was an ass kicking.
Yeah, it even says here that Batman's just trying to survive.
It was like Stone Cold whooping Booker T in the supermarket. way back when.
It was worse. It was like Stone Cold against a jobber. I mean, he was really laying it on. Batman takes several blows to the face that are really bloody.
Yeah, and then Batman gets to have a chance at gaining the upper hand because
there's a dead zone,
a space in where there's a dead zone, and Spawn is depowered, and then that's when Batman gets a second wind and starts shaking the ropes, a la the Ultimate Warrior stood to say. Can you imagine? Batman just starts doing this. I'm like, what is he doing? See, that's when they needed to draw a scene of them in a ring. Like, remember when Batman in the 66 show boxed with the Riddler?
Yeah.
So it would be a wrestling ring, and then Batman could do that. But yeah, so they have an explanation for it. But the carrot that the Court of Owls is dangling in front of both of these combatants to get them to fight, both of these heroes, is we can help you resurrect the person that you love the woman that you love the most. So for Spawn, he was told by the voices that he was hearing. That is very much like the Ultimate Warrior, the voices in it. Anyway, but the voices that we were hearing was saying that
I think he
Batman.
talks to his hands.
He probably could, maybe. That the voice he was hearing was telling him that Batman had the soul, won the soul, and he had to defeat Batman to get Wanda's soul back and then be able to resurrect her. And conversely, they told Batman that if he helped the Court of Owls and opened the void or whatever they called it, they'd give him back the woman that meant everything to him, which of course was his mother, Martha.
Why'd you say that name?
Yeah. So I liked this conceit. Like it made sense. Like, wait, what are you going to dangle? How are you going to get these two to fight? And it's really interesting because you see two factions of the Court of Owls. It's like the NWO Red and NWO Black and White. A lot of wrestling analogies. Yeah. But one of them wants Batman to help them and basically, eventually become their leader, unbeknownst to him. The other faction wants to say, no, we're going to use Spawn to kill Batman. Right. Yeah. And that's what it is. Yeah. It's kind of like Lex Luthor in BVS, but imagine if it was done well. Then you'd have this book.
There's actually a really cool panel where Spawn has stepped out of a dead zone and they're on either side of an alley.
Yeah.
And Spawn's like, "You come over here," and Batman's like, "No, you come over here."
Yeah. And then he's like, Batman's trying to explain, we're both being played. I'm not the bad guy. And he's like, well, how can I trust you? And Batman steps forward to give Spawn, the power advantage. He's like, then kill me if you're going to. Otherwise, come with me and let's talk.
Yeah.
And that's why, then they go to the Batcave, because when you have Greg Capullo drawing a Batman with Spawn, with or without Spawn, you want to see him draw the Batcave, and we get a chance to see that there. But I liked one of the.
By the way, he draws a really good Spawn.
Oh, absolutely! He did the book for years. He did that book, the Spawn book for years. And he did most of Scott Snyder's Batman run as well.
The close up here is that when he finally tells Batman who he's talking about, he's like, Wanda, that was her name. They say you're holding her soul, and I want it back. The power, seeping out of his eyes, and the way his face really looks. Cool yeah.
But I like how they break the tension with some comedy when Alfred walks in and he's like, "Oh, I made some tea or whatever." Exactly. And then Spawn's like, "You have a butler on your team?" Yeah. And Batman's like, "I trust him with my life." It's just the fact that Spawn's like, "That was a butler gonna do for you." And so that was funny. And then we get a mention of, that's when, as we alluded to before, Batman tells Spawn of the Bat family with Nightwing, and we see headshots of Nightwing, Batgirl, and all the rest of them. And then we see Spawn's team, which is Spawn, Haunt, Medieval Spawn, Gunslinger Spawn, She-Spawn. Yeah. So I like that we get that page. And also the way it was drawn, like it's a black page where on one side you have all the Batman characters, the other side you have all the Spawn Scorched characters.
Yeah.
And then in the middle you have half and half. Half Batman's face and half Spawn's face.
Yeah.
That was such a cool.
You see one eye of Batman and one eye of Spawn.
That was such a cool page. I love that page. That was cool. And then we even get a cameo from Joker.
Yeah, and wasn't that when did Joker have that face? Was that New 52?
That was New 52.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. I remembered that correctly, and yeah,
good. Lord, is it disturbing?
Yeah, ooh, very disturbing. So. There's also another page. I gotta say, it's 4 split panels of, Batman and Spawn each kind of going out to gather information, and with Batman's villains the people that he kind of shook down for information,
They're
they're
being
unconscious.
Maimed. Yeah, they're being maimed, but they're
with
just
spawns. They're all just slaughtered.
They're dead.
Yeah, one of the guys has his eye hanging out.
Spawn has no chill. You know what it is? Spawn has no chill.
Yeah,
like we needed Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze to come in and tell him, hey, chill.
Hey, chill.
Yeah, that would have been funny.
Yeah.
And then to watch Spawn take him out would have been even funnier. But it would have to have been drawn like Arnold Schwarzenegger's Freeze for me to. Like, if you're gonna off one of Batman's villains and Spawn's gonna do it, it has to be specifically that one. Please. That's for part 3, which we'll allude to later. But
when Joker rips his face off, again because he had the face tied on at this point.
Yeah, and he's like, he's trying to tell Spawn we're more alike than you think. And Spawn's like, enough of your games. Like, you gotta love the Joker. The Joker can unite people that are sort of antagonistic towards each other.
Yeah.
by just annoying the crap out of them to the point where, hey, you know what? Let's team up just because this guy's such a. It's like Batman and Spawn and Spawn's only been there for a couple hours, but even in that time, even Spawn's annoyed with the Joker's nonsense. Like he's like, all right, enough.
Yeah. And how about that final image of Joker with the clowns?
Yes, with the
Yeah. Wow.
Violator, mini violator. Yeah.
The little mini violators. Yeah. Drawn just gorgeously creepy.
Oh well, that's the best. That's the best phraseology to use. So they kind of sow the seeds of, both are kind of planning. You get the sense that somebody is planning something more sinister down the line. So then Batman and Spawn, kind of work together to take down the Court of Owls. And they do successfully, but something. So they work together, and I like the sort of the code word. Like, so Batman's like, "What was your wife's maiden name before you got married?" And he's like, "Blake." Why? He goes, "Okay, when you hear that, when I scream that name, get ready to act, right?" And so they teamed up and took out the court of the Talon from the court of Talon assassin and it seems like Spawn took him with him.
He just kind of he absorbed him into his cape.
Yeah.
I really like that scene where, Talon reveals he's talking to one of the Court of Owls, and he reveals, he's like, when Batman learns that he can save his mother, he'll open the portal. Spawn's just a trigger, and then he turns around and Spawn just kind of materializes in the room, and he's like, aha.
Come find me.
He's like, find us if you can.
And then the other part was too, and then when he tells Batman about his mother, he's like, her soul's been gone a lot. Like, I guess that, on some level, he'd want to bring her back, but I think he knows that, through all of his adventures with crap like the Lazarus Pit and all that stuff, that he's like, playing God and trying to bring back the dead is not, going to end well. So his response was, it didn't shock me when he says, her soul's been gone a long time. It's like, I won't help you because it doesn't matter. Her soul's been gone a long time.
Yeah.
So it kind of echoes the fact that, even though he still once a year kind of, sits in the room and is sad about it, he has moved on to a degree for him to be able to say that. Because otherwise, I mean, if you had told this to year one Batman, he probably would have entertained the idea.
Yeah, he would still be in the early stages of the grief process.
So he'd be more okay if I could bring her back, or why not? But at this point, he's like, no, I'm not playing with that kind of mumbo jumbo, right? So and so then he tag teams with Spawn and they defeat the Talon. But then there's something weird at the end because there's a focus on one of Martha's
Why'd you say that name?
pearls, and then it's the Talon and the Court of Owls was very heavily focused on this particular pearl because that was the key to opening the void and getting Batman to do what he wanted to do. So when Batman finds the pearl, I think it was Batman that picked up the pearl at the end.
Yeah.
It was cracked. And then we cut to another 2-page, a double-sided page, split screen page is what the word I'm looking for, where we see the bat signal in the air, and the description is, we see an image of Wanda looking at the bat signal. She's like, Wanda looks at the bat signal, not knowing its significance or something along those lines. Mm-hmm. And then on the other side of the page, we see in a church, we see the haunt.
Father Kilgore.
Kilgore, the haunt alter ego. In a church, asking Martha.
Mm-hmm. And ironically, he looks at her and goes, "Why did you say that name?"
Yeah. Asking Martha, I was waiting for it, if she's okay, if she needs anything. And then at the very end, you see in the corner, the clown saying, "Now it's my turn," or something of that nature.
And now the next move is mine.
Yeah, the next move, that's it. There you go.
Yep.
So this clearly sets up a sequel. Mm-hmm. And now I really want it because I'm fascinated. Like, what's going on? I definitely want more, but that's an intriguing way to end things. But I think why I like this issue better than the first is because we're dealing with the Court of Owls. It has become a very popular Batman rogue or rogue organization, and I like what has been done with them, and so to see them again opens up a lot of possibilities. And I think they're just clandestine and creepy enough to work in a crossover like this. But also, even in a brief cameo, seeing the Joker and from Spawn's point of view, Clown, it just heightens the stakes of it all. And I like that. And even though the waters are a little bit murky, setting it at a point within both characters' continuity, it just adds to the stakes of the whole thing. As opposed to just a random, hey, look who I ran into. No, let's fight. It's so
yeah. There's like converging backstories as to why they're together and why the narrative is going forward this way.
Absolutely. And so I liked it on that level a lot more. And I think the characterization for both our heroes was pitch perfect. Like, that's the Batman I want. The one that, he's a little prickly.
Yeah.
But he's not an asshole. Like,
he's weird, but he's rational.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what's your nickname for Batman? Spooky? What do you call him? Yeah. He's more along those lines than Jackass version of him. And then Spawn is he still kills people because they're evil and they're criminals. But
they definitely did at Arkham Asylum.
Yeah, but he's not as
he's not kill happy in this. He's not like slaughtering people.
That's
for the heck of it.
Yeah. So I don't know. This one went down a lot better for me, and the art was beautiful. The coloring was beautiful. It was all fun. I was really, really impressed with this crossover. It was a long time coming. The crossover of these two characters again. It was worth the wait for me.
Yeah, 28 years. That's quite a long time.
And I hope we don't have to wait that long for the next installment because they ended on a cliffhanger, and I want to know what happens next.
Fair point.
Spoiler alert. As of yet, we have not seen Martha in the Spawn in the Spawn comics. So that'd be funny if we just in a random scene we see Martha at church again.
Yeah.
I would be down for that personally, but But yeah, is there anything else you want to mention before we rate it?
No, I think we covered it very well. It was a lot of fun to go back and do that. It was a lot of fun to go back and read that initial story because I had so much fun with it the first time.
Yeah.
And just again seeing those two characters. When you see characters like that, or the Batman Spider-Man crossover, there's something innately attractive and galvanizing about that.
Yeah, for sure. So before we rate it, would you be down for a follow-up to this based on the events of this issue?
Oh, yeah, if something more comes out, as far as, are we talking about the Spawn series or the another Batman Spawn team up?
The sequel to the Batman Spawn based on
yeah. Oh, I would love to know what happens next.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. But with that being said, let's go ahead and rate it. So remember, out of 5 for story and 5 for art. Go ahead.
I'm going to give it 5 and 5. Like I said, I thought the story, it made a lot of sense this time, and like I said, there was more backstory that was built up around it this time, and the art was gorgeous. So
yeah, I'm in agreement. It's a 5 on both story and art. I really like this second attempt at crossing these two characters over, and I definitely want to see more based on the events of this that unfolded here. So I'm just imagining a Joker clown team up. That would be really disturbing. And this is the issue where, remember, the Spawn mentioned Superman, so that was cool too. But yeah, that wraps up our Batman Spawn crossover talk. We'll of course be back. We will launch our Spawn show in due course, as Donnie and I go over some fancy names for it and things of that nature. But we will launch our Spawn show soon, and of course you'll find plenty of talk about Batman on this very show with either me and Donnie, me and Nick, me and Chris, me and whoever wants to come on and talk Batman. It's more than welcome. But in the meantime, before all that happens, if you want to talk to Donnie or I about anything that we cover on this network, you can. Donnie, where did they find you?
You can find me on Twitter or TikTok as the Emerald Enthusiast. Let's talk comics. Let's talk collectibles. Let's talk Spawn and Batman. Also, make sure to check out my YouTube channel where I do lots of comic book product reviews.
Indeed, you should check them out because they're great. And also, McFarlane should send Donnie the Batman Year 2 statue and the Action Comics #1 statue so he can do an expert review on his channel, and then send them both to me. Because he respects and appreciates my friendship, and I'm the podcast tribal chief, and he knows that's the role. So McFarlane, get on it, and then we'll talk.
I acknowledge you, my tribal chief.
Thank you. That's why he's the wise man. See,
yeah, and that's because, like I said, I'm waiting for 4 interconnecting statues of the 4.
Yeah, otherwise he wouldn't send them to me. But I can see that. But it's a lot more respect I get on here than I get when I hang up the call. So I'll take it. But anyway. Check out Donnie's reviews. They're fantastic. That's why he got the job on the show. And then if you want to chat with me, it's at Adam_LeafsFan on Twitter. We have the Facebook group, which is in the description below. Click that. I'll add you, and we can continue the conversation there. But until next time, remember that Batman and Spawn teaming up is forever, despite how temporary it is. From the first time they try and save Wanda and Martha to the last. So long, everybody.
So long, everyone.